I do have to chastise this group somewhat. When you bring in a speaker to speak on a special topic, aren't you supposed to bring in an expert who has dealt with this?
I assumed you had. All things, on all subjects.
Actually, no. I thought when I went to Lansing I was bringing quite a bit of experience. I mean, I raised a family in this area. I've been involved in agriculture all my life. I've run my own business for 35 years, served on the school board. I served as county commissioner for several years. I chaired both of those boards. You know, I thought, I'm bringing something to Lansing. Liquor laws? No way. This is new to me. We have a three-tier liquor distribution system. I had to go out and do my homework, but that's actually been kind of rewarding because now I do feel more prepared. As you know, each legislative term, some thoughts usually come up about reforming this system, either in a minor way or a major way, and I do feel more prepared for that now. Thank you.
Glad to help.
But what I have to offer is more of an overview of the system. You know, if you want to get down into the weeds of some particular aspect of the law and try to stump me, you probably will succeed. But I'll give it my best shot to give you that overview that I've been discovering, and I've also was asked to mention the role of Michigan Beer and Wine Wholesalers Association. They're known to donate to a lot of campaign accounts, so I'll try to mention them also in the presentation. But basically, as you all remember, back in 1933, the 18th Amendment establishing prohibition was repealed by the 21st Amendment. And that amendment gave the right to control alcohol to the states. So each state controls it within their own borders. It was hoped at that time that a new system would eliminate some of the abuses that existed before prohibition. So this three-tier type of a system that I'll explain was adopted by many states. It's been a long time since 1933, so a lot of people are saying, haven't we outgrown that? Can't we make some changes? But there was corruption before prohibition. If you wanted to have a Schlitz beer, you had to go to the Schlitz bar, basically, because the brewery owned the saloon or the bar, and they did their own distribution to that bar. And well, guess what? If you walked into that bar, you didn't find the other brands. You found that brand. And along with all that control, there is opportunity for corruption. It's hard to track the movement of all that alcohol. You know, if no one's controlling the pricing, suppose one outfit decided, well, I'm going to put mine on sale, and 6-packs are 50 cents today. Well, it might not be the best thing for our society to have some of that going on. So this three-tier system was put in place by a lot of states. And basically what it did was separate three major portions of the system and said, if you're in this tier, you cannot own or operate one of the other two, and vice versa. The three tiers, quite simply, are you have the producer, the brewery or the winery that produces the product. They make the beer. You have the retailer, you have your grocery store, you have your bar that sells it to the public. And in between, you have the middleman. You've got the distributor, or sometimes called the wholesaler, who takes from the producer, gets it to the stores, the bars. So the three-tier system says if you're in one of these tiers, you cannot touch the other tiers. I'll probably get in trouble as I sort of talk off script and then try to find my way back onto script. But there are some exceptions, obviously, to these rules. You know, we have a lot of brew pubs growing. If you have a brew pub and you're a small producer of beer, you're allowed to sell that directly to the public. So you're 1 in 3, and there is no distributor in between. So you can go to a Round Barn and buy wine that they produce. They'll sell it to you. There's no distributor in between. So there are some exceptions for, mainly for these smaller producers, but other than some of these minor tweakings to allow for the growing craft industry and the growing agritourism winery industry, there haven't been any major changes to this system proposed in recent legislatures. It's interesting to note Michigan is 5th in the nation with more than 180 craft breweries. They saw a 30% increase in production this year. It's just exploding. It's really a big thing in Michigan. And we are one of the top 10 wine producing states now. We have 226 winemakers, and they saw a 29% sales increase in the last 5 years. And these numbers have come about while we have this 3-tier system in place. So some of the arguments, in favor of the system say, hey, look, it's working. I guess I'll try to just go over a few of the pros and cons to this system. If you're a small brewery or a craft brewery, this system can help you compete with the Anheuser-Busch's of the world or the Coors, because you have equal access to the distribution part of the system, and you have equal access to the retailers thereby. We all know how it works for like a Sam's Club or a Costco when they go to a big producer and they buy in bulk at a discount, and then they could kind of dominate the market and crowd out the mom and pop store. Well, that is kind of prevented from happening with this 3-tier system. And a small brewery might have a hard time cracking that market, and a small retailer might have a hard time competing with the Costco across the road. So there are some pricing controls involved in this system. These distributors have to publish their prices and hold them for like 180 days, so there's stability, and each retailer can get the same price, basically. And they're not allowed to sell at a loss or at a steep discount.
So how do you have sales and things on
Well, there's
wine or beer?
There's some leeway in the system for, you're not told exactly what you have to retail it for, but there are certain practices that are disallowed, selling at a loss and, giving it away free for a promotion, those type of things. And it's slightly different for hard liquor or spirits than it is for the beer and wine industries. In the spirits, the state of Michigan actually acts as the wholesaler. Anyone that buys spirits in Michigan has to do it through the state. Although the state has privatized the distribution part of that middleman, there are distributors, but the state acts as the wholesaler. When this system is put in place, then it's pretty easy to track all the alcohol movement in Michigan. So it's easy to tax for the state. That is seen as one of the benefits of the system. There's been instances where people have produced kind of a fake alcohol product that can be dangerous. Well, that can be stopped in this kind of a system. Not that there isn't possibilities for corruption. In Chicago, this system has not worked very well. But I think one of the main benefits is to the small breweries, small winemakers, smaller retailers. They have equal access to the system. Some people have criticized, say, well, if you're too small, you can't quite crack into getting these distributors to handle your product. But in general, it's good for the smaller producers and retailers. It's easy to tax. I covered that. Some people say that a pro to the system is that stores that sell beer and wine can maintain a little smaller inventories, because this distribution center, they maintain large refrigerated warehouses and a big trucking fleet, so the store can just rely on a steady supply when they need it. They can carry many brands and not have to worry about, inventory problems. But some of the cons go with the same part of this. Usually the people that oppose the system is something to do with these people in the middle, because they're adding cost to the system, and they're making money on the system. There's some specific instances, I believe in Saugatuck was an example, where a small brewery, and then across the road is a retail shop that would like to sell their beer, but the nearest wholesaler is 50 miles away. The beer has to travel to the wholesaler and then back 50 miles to the retailer, because it's a small town and they don't have another wholesaler close by. The wholesalers are limited. It's not a true free market thing. They have to be approved by the state. They're pretty much given a territory to cover. That's not free market. That's not open to competition. Those are some of the real criticisms of the system. That beer, when it has to go to the warehouse and back, isn't going to be quite as fresh, and that can be an issue for these craft breweries. Some people feel that the prices are just artificially driven up by this system with the extra person in the middle and the lack of competition for them. So where does Michigan Beer and Wine Wholesalers come into this? It was shown to me as we look at campaign statements that they give a lot of money to a lot of different candidates on both sides of the aisle. Pretty much most representatives and senators can say, hey, they gave me some money. They represent that middle group, the distributors, the wholesalers, and they have a PAC, a political action committee, to support the interests of their members. Now, back up a second to see how a PAC works. It's not all evil. I'm a farmer. I want legislators to take into consideration the interests of fruit farmers, small fruit farmers, when they work on their legislation. I do that by joining Farm Bureau. At Farm Bureau, they've really got quite a neat system. They have a convention. We can all go there and argue about just what policies we want to endorse as a group, and tell our legislators these are the policies we want to support. We do that. Farm Bureau has a PAC, a political action committee. Farm Bureau interviews candidates who are running for office, and they choose to endorse some. They choose to give some money. It's the same way with what Michigan Beer and Wine Wholesalers are doing. They're representing their members so that their point of view is heard, and their point of view is basically they like this system. They're profiting from it, but they say it works. They say that's why our craft brewing industry is done so well. So just as Farm Bureau represents agriculture, they represent their members. If I take money from a PAC, it does not tie my vote. They see in me, if they're going to give me money, they see someone who, I've been named a friend of agriculture. Obviously, I was a good candidate for Farm Bureau's endorsement, but I haven't voted with them all the time. A bill will come up, and you look at the bottom line, it says those who oppose, those who support, and I have voted for bills that Farm Bureau has opposed. I've voted against bills that they have supported. Most often I'm in line with their interests, though. The big picture of who I am, they support that, and with them I am pretty much in line with their votes. I'm not sure why Michigan Beer and Wine Wholesalers are quite as generous as they are, because we have not really discussed in the legislature recently any major changes to the three-tier system. The main changes that we have put into place have dealt with the small breweries, the small wineries, allowing them maybe another location to sell their product, allowing them maybe to produce a few more barrels per year than the old legislation, because we want to see that industry keep growing. But I've received money from both Farm Bureau and Michigan Beer and Wine. I don't know if I will from them in the future, because I am open to looking at changes in the system, but that's just a primer on how PACs work. And they also supply lobbyists. I don't think I know a lobbyist from Michigan Beer and Wine, but I do know the Farm Bureau lobbyists, because we get a lot of bills, especially I was on the Agriculture Committee, so a bill is being debated. I'll get a note literally from the lobby of behind the house, come on out and talk to me, and I'll say, well, the Farm Bureau guy there wants to, now do you know this and this and this, this is why we support this, and he gives me information, background on a bill, and I'll say, well, why would I be opposed to it? And he said, well, these are the arguments against it. A good lobbyist will do that. Or they'll come to your office and get an appointment. We want to talk about this bill or that bill. Especially with the lack of experience in Lansing, lobbyists can be very helpful sources of information, and you learn. They have to be basically kind of honest with you, because if they lose their credibility, if they're caught in a lie, they're done. They'll be out of town pretty quick. But you know, it's like anything. You have to use your judgment as a legislator, and hopefully we're not selling our votes.
What about small distilleries? They fall under the liquor portion of this system, which is different from the wine and beer. How are they treated? Are they treated any differently or not?
I think some of the new legislation had to do with them also, to give them, you know, I know I can go to Three Oaks and buy some product at the distillery there. So I think they fall, even though the state handles spirits a little bit differently, some of our laws have allowed them to continue to grow.
I know there is some concern. I'm the one who sort of researched this question for the newsletter, is why I'm asking these questions. But there was some concern about on the part of the distillers, the small distilleries, and they had a meeting in Three Oaks at with Fred Upton, which kind of, I don't quite know how that fits in, because it is a state system and a state tax, but they feel that there are some parts of the law that do not help them or hurt them. And then you might also mention how much of the tax is on liquor, the state tax.
Well, I would say on spirits, the state has given all control over the movement of spirits within the state to the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. And they are the wholesaler. So if you buy hard spirits in Michigan, you buy it. Michigan is the wholesaler. And there are price controls. Wholesale prices are set by the Liquor Commission. Minimum off-premise shelf prices are fixed. And any ordering of spirits must be done through that Liquor Control Commission. So again, it's a lot of state regulation. It's a lot of state control, which kind of goes against Republican or libertarian ideas. But you know, the alcohol industry affects society greatly. There's a lot of money passes through this system. There's a lot of jobs involved. Alcohol use and abuse affects society in tremendous ways, often negative, and yet alcohol is enjoyed in moderation by many people and can be even a health benefit in moderation. I think there will always be a need for pretty heavy regulation on alcohol distribution in Michigan. I think there's probably some changes that could be made to this system, but I don't know exactly what they are. Some people argue that it's working pretty darn well. Other people say, well, it's impeding the movement too much. So those debates will continue. But that's at least from the sky a view of how the system works and how it got started and some of the pros and cons. And I didn't read my speech, so I probably missed some things, but
Well, the amount of the tax.
there you have it.
You know how much?
I don't know exactly
It's
the
about
amount of the tax.
50%.
Well, there you have it. It's about 50%.
Of a bottle of, if you buy a bottle of scotch, about 50% of the cost of a bottle of scotch is taxed.
That is imported or imported scotch or?
And I think it's any scotch, most scotch is imported.
David, I owned a liquor store, party store.
You should be speaking here.
That's why she was enthusiastic about this topic.
So, you had to order your everything online, on the phone. If you missed that deadline, you could not order. I mean, it wouldn't allow you into the system. I would have to drive to Grand Rapids, to the Liquor Control Commission and pick up all the liquor there. I mean, that was and I was told, in fact, getting a liquor license was probably harder than adopting a child.
Yeah, I've been told that.
It was really
How often did you order? You say you missed a deadline. Was that a monthly thing or
No, once a week.
Once a week.
So, yeah, the trucks would come in from the liquor department, and it would be like every week we'd have a delivery. But anyway, I know how, you find a lot of people abusing liquor. There were a lot of drugs that came in. I mean, but it was, and the price was set. You could not charge more than 17% of above the level. If you broke a bottle of liquor, if a bottle of liquor fell down and broke, it would be like you lost money.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't make a profit.
So you got to like the plastic bottles more. Probably, yeah. There's
You make money in that business if it's a set price and,
We sold everything there.
oh, so you see accoutrements with it?
Yes.
Oh, yes, got it, okay.
How does Michigan rank if it's 50% above? How does Michigan rank with other states? Are other states less than 50%, more than 50%? Where are we in the ranking? Do we know?
I've heard that we're a little higher than Indiana. I know the liquor can be bought a little cheaper in Indiana than here, but I don't know otherwise.
I mean, liquor was always cheaper.
But one of the arguments is, well, this whole system promotes a little bit of temperance by keeping that price up, and that's not a bad thing. So
Well, they always talk about sin taxes and alcohol and cigarettes were part of the sin taxes.
I have a question. Does the state control the number of liquor licenses that are, because I know, I mean, you can go into a restaurant and they will serve you beer and wine, but then they say, but if you would like order martini before dinner, I mean, you would know that they don't have a liquor license. So I'm assuming that the state, is it controlled by region or is it controlled by, it is controlled, okay.
yeah, it's all
So many
state controlled.
So many in the state or so many in
County.
county?
Yeah.
When you buy a liquor license, are you not, I understand you're buying it from a former license holder rather than from the state. Shouldn't you be able to buy it from the state so that the price can remain?
I can't really address
You
that.
buy the liquor license from the previous owner, but you still have to go through the licensing department, through the.
But the owner can charge you whatever you deal it. You can charge whatever, rather than the state saying, this is what it costs to have a liquor license if you're properly vetted.
Yes.
So it can be an astronomical amount if they're very few.
Oh, yeah, it can be.
Question down there.
Slightly, it's on alcohol, but it's not on anything we've been talking about. Recently, the law changed that allowed wineries to offer tastes at farmers markets, and I was curious if you knew, A, how that came about, and B, whether anybody has actually done it. I personally haven't seen it, but I don't go to every farmer's market, so I was just curious. Maybe it was regional that was more.
You have to repeat that question.
The question was regarding sales of wine at farmers market.
Not sales,
Tasting, yes. I think that was passed this term just recently, that we allowed to have the tasting at farmers markets. So I don't go to these markets myself, but I assume it's probably begun in places.
Never seen it, just curious.
Other questions?
Do you know how the distribution of the tax revenue is used in the budget for Michigan?
No, I don't.
He'll find out, though, now that he's on the Appropriations Committee.
So the more we drink, would it help the budget?
I'm
To what extent?
I'm sure it would, and if you sped down the highway at the same time, that'd be good too, because we get tickets, and I don't know if that's all general fund money or if some of it's restricted. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a good question. Or comment.
So in a sense, it's taxed at every level, isn't it?
There's plenty of taxes collected on it.
A lot of money, very lucrative.
It's a lot of state control. It's anti-competitive, and yet the system kind of works. So, at what point, where do you attack making some changes? I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of curious, and maybe somebody else that's been in the business knows, that, like when I was in high school, a pack of cigarettes was 50 cents. Okay, I've been out of high school for 35 years. Now it's, well, everybody knows what the price is. But it seems like the price of beer is almost the same. Is there any particular reason for that? I mean, across the board, I imagine it's because it hasn't been taxed the way cigarettes have been taxed, and if anybody know. It seems like the prices are pretty comparable 35 years later to buy a 6-pack or 12-pack of beer. Cigarettes are the same rate tax and the price of beer.
I think cigarettes have gone up more. I think beer has gone up
Why
quite a
is
bit.
beer still the same price as cigarettes?
Well, there's,
Well, it's not completely, but it's comparable.
Repeat the
It hasn't gone up
question.
the same way. I was just curious.
well, the question was regarding relatively cigarette prices and beer prices over the
Or even
last
any kind of prices.
20 years,
Or any kind
that
of
maybe
prices.
beer hasn't gone up that much. I haven't.
Is it just the taxes, I guess? The taxes haven't been levied on that as much?
Oh, I think they're taxed pretty heavily, but, there is some free market as to the production of a product, and that's probably where it lies more. But, Dr. Lester?
So you said that if I wanted to be a wholesale distributor of liquor, I'm out of luck because that's the job of the state. But if I want to be a wholesale distributor of beer and wine, is that possible, or are they all grandfathered in and there's no room for any more?
Well, that's one of the, first of all, you could distribute liquor. The state acts as the wholesaler, but it has privatized the actual physical distribution. That's one of the criticisms of this system, is that it's been limited in the distribution to a certain amount of families that kind of control these distribution points. They're given a territory. It's not competitive, and that it should be opened up into more competition, more free market.
Folks going into that line of work. I
That's,
shouldn't tell my kids in high school that they can grow up and become a beer and wine distributor because they're just out of luck.
I would say you're making a true statement there. It's kind of a closed system, and that's as I've read, that's probably the number one criticism of the system, is that there's some families in the middle that are making a lot of money, and they are probably donating pretty heavily to Michigan beer and wine wholesalers.
Has the Tea Party taken up this cause?
No, don't give them more to work on.
We appreciate your honesty.
My friends at the Tea Party.
Any other questions? I guess I'm getting to this.
Is that a hook to pull me out of here? or-
No,
I propose we give a round of thanks. to
I
our
think we
representatives.
should.
Thank you. Thank you.